Hey guys, my name is Parker. I am the attention deficit firefighter, and I am out on the range today, so please bear with me on any gunfire you may hear in the background. What I have for you today is a comparison of 4 different axes that I've acquired. I have 2 blunt-faced axes, a Badaxx and my Lawless Axe, and 2 traditional style fire axes, an 8-pound Council Tools flat-headed axe and a 6-pound Council Tools pick-headed axe. What I'm looking to see is if there's any meaningful difference between having a blunt-faced axe or a sharp-faced axe when going through difficult materials. Normally, I would like to use some 1-inch OSB or standard ply and some shingles. Well, I don't have that because lumber is expensive. What I do have are a bunch of old metal-skinned doors that I can no longer use in my forcible entry prop. So I'm going to be using those today. So first off, I'm going to be working on this door with the old standard. This is a 6-pound pick-headed axe. Right, this particular one is a Council tool and it's mounted on a fiberglass handle, and I have no idea how old it is or when the last time it was sharpened or cleaned was, but I'm going to fix that as soon as I'm done testing. So in an attempt to make things as real as possible, I'm going to be using regular fire gloves and some safety goggles. These Borks are completely ornamental. They're not really useful for anything other than looking nice. With that said, my goal is to make one central cut all the way down and see how it feels. In between each iteration, I'm going to scoot the door over so that my door is centered up with this concreted in post so that I get the best possible cut I can get and keep things as fair as possible. I'm also have been screwing this door into the stud to keep it up. All right, first pass with a 6-pound pick-headed axe. Overall, I'd say that wasn't very difficult. The actual bladed face did a really good job of going through the really thin metal, and the foam behind it obviously didn't offer any resistance. I was able to get a couple of inches of penetration, and looking at this blade, there is no damage whatsoever. It did get gummed up a couple of times in the cuts, but I kind of expected that. It is a thin blade that's passing through the substrate, and that can cause a little bit of pinching. We'll see if that matters here in a little bit. So next up, I have my 8-pound Council Tools FE8 forcible entry axe. Right, this is a newer model that Council Tools has offered. Traditionally, they've offered a 6-pound flat-headed axe. I went ahead and went with the 8-pound axe because I find that I prefer a heavier axe. But I'm going to do this twice. I'm going to do it once with the blunt face and once with the flathead and see if that makes any difference. All right. First pass with the bladed side of the Council Tools FE8 8-pound axe with the bladed side. I can definitely feel the weight difference between a 6-pound and an 8-pound axe, in that it made it a little bit harder to get it up and get clean, consistent follow-up cuts, but that extra weight did lead to a little bit longer cuts for each strike. Looking at this blade, there is again absolutely no damage. I did have the same problem with the blade gumming up. That may also be technique. This is a little bit steep and it's a metal skinned door. I'm going to go ahead and try the flat-headed side and see if that makes any difference. All right, going ahead with the flat-headed side of this FE8. On this material, being that it's metal and bends, I got absolutely no penetration whatsoever with the flat-headed side of this FE8 axe. I don't know how that bodes for the blunt face axes coming up, but we're going to find out. I will say that I feel like if I had been using OSB, which means I'm going to have to go to Lowe's and buy some OSB, this would have gone right through it. Next up, I'm going to be trying my blunt-faced 8-pound Lawless Brothers Axe. I have mine set up right now, coming straight from work, with a 24-inch Council Tools Halligan, and this is going to get its own video later. I already know this spike is going to go right through this door. I'll try it here in a few minutes, but in the meantime, I want to see how this blunt face does. 8-pound Lawless Brothers Axe. Let's see how it does. Well, I already broke the screw. That's a good sign. This axe was the easiest for me to manage so far in terms of lining up my strikes accurately and connecting them with the strikes before it. The blunt face of this axe is absolutely no damage whatsoever. And I did make some pretty good cuts into this door. And I'll give you guys a close-up here in just a minute. If this was OSB, I feel like this would have cleared it no problem. I definitely have to go to Lowe's. The last tool I'm going to be testing is this Badaxx. It has a blunt face, but it comes down into a V that may turn into better penetration on this door. I'm also able to swing this axe a lot faster because it's a much lighter head. We'll see how that plays out when I start swinging on the door. All right, door test with the Badaxx. Broke another screw. With this axe, it was actually a little bit more difficult to line up my shots than it was with the Lawless Brothers Axe. And once my cuts started getting a little squirrely on me, it was really difficult to try to recover. Had I been operating on an actual scene, I'd probably still be swinging to make the same size cuts that I could do with the other axes. With that said, it did go through the thin sheet metal really, really easily. And looking at the front of this axe, there's still absolutely no damage. Of all the tools I've tested, this is by far the lightest, and it did still go through the metal skin pretty easily. Just getting a little better look at some of this damage. With the Lawless Axe, you can see it's a really wide cut, and it didn't take any more effort than any of the other axes did. What I did was I kept swinging until I felt as tired as I did after the 6-pound flathead. The FE8 with the bladed side, it was a little harder to get my blade marks to line up. I'm sure I could fix that with some technique, but it did still penetrate really well. I think this would have done really, really well against some OSB. The flat side of my FE8 did not penetrate the metal at all. The 6-pound pick-headed axe, I think, did a good job. It produced some nice long cuts. I think part of that is that flared tip at the end of the axe made it a little bit better for piercing and continuing to slice. The Badaxx started out really strong. It was really easy to line my cuts up, but once it started getting squirrely, it really got difficult to continue the cut. Since I went ahead and used the back side of my FE8, I'll see what the back side of my other axes can do too. It seems to me the picks on all these axes worked just fine. So what do you guys think? Based on this limited testing, do you think flat-faced axes are a fad, or do you think they're the way to go for trying to penetrate light materials? I think that my bladed axes definitely made some very neat cuts, and with good technique, I could become extremely proficient in that. On the other side, with my limited technique, I was able to make really good cuts, at least with the Lawless Axe. The Badaxx was by far the lightest and the easiest to use and to carry, but it produced, in my opinion, the worst cuts of the four. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments. I will say I'm going to have to go to Lowe's and pick up some OSB and some plywood. I'll have to take out a second mortgage on the house, but I think I can get it done. I think that'll probably be a little bit better of a test in an actual more real world scenario of how these axes would hold up. Overall, I would say I've carried each one of these axes, and I have actually worked on firegrounds with each one of these axes. They all do the job. There's nothing wrong with any of them. It's all preference. It doesn't need to be SIG guys and Glock guys when it comes to fire axes. It's what you like to carry and what you want to buy. There's nothing wrong with that. Me personally, I'm probably going to continue to carry this Lawless Axe. It has continued to impress me, and I like that it looks cool. I call it my fire hammer. In any case, you guys stay safe out there, and I'll see you in my next video. Again, my name is Parker. I am the Attention Deficit Firefighter. You guys have a good day.